The day the tractor rolled into the dusty village square, people didn't see hope. They saw a joke. The sun hung low over the cracked fields of Harlington Valley, painting the sky with a tired orange glow, while a rusted, engine-less tractor creaked behind an old pickup truck. Children ran beside it laughing, dogs barked, and farmers standing near the grain mill shook their heads in disbelief. To them, the machine was nothing more than a dead piece of metal, an empty shell that belonged in a scrapyard. But the man driving that pickup truck, a quiet and weather-worn farmer named Ethan Caldwell, looked at that broken tractor as if it were the beginning of something extraordinary. Before we continue this story, take a moment to like this video, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of never giving up. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. It means a lot to see how far these stories travel. Ethan Caldwell stepped out of the pickup slowly, dust clinging to his boots and the long sleeves of his faded blue shirt. His face carried the lines of a man who had lived through more winters than he should have. But his eyes, those steady gray eyes, held a strange calm, the kind that comes from someone who has already lost everything and therefore has nothing left to fear. Harlington Valley had once been a prosperous farming town. Years ago, its wheat fields stretched like golden oceans under the wind. Families gathered every harvest season to celebrate under lantern light, and laughter drifted across barns and wooden fences. But that was before the droughts came, before prices dropped, before farms began closing one after another like candles being blown out in a storm. Ethan's farm had been one of the last to fall. 5 years earlier, his father, William Caldwell, had stood in the same fields with pride, showing his son how to read the soil with just a handful of dirt. William used to say that land had a voice, that it spoke through the way it crumbled between your fingers, through the way it smelled after rain. Ethan had believed every word. But when the drought stretched across 3 brutal summers, the land stopped speaking. The crops failed. The bank notices came. And one cold October morning, William Caldwell collapsed in the barn from a heart that had simply worked too hard for too long. Ethan buried his father beneath the old oak tree behind the farmhouse. 2 months later, the bank took the land. For a long time after that, Ethan disappeared from Harlington Valley. People assumed he had moved to the city, like so many others who left after the farms died. But nobody knew where he went, and eventually, his name faded into the quiet background of village memory. Until the day he came back with a tractor that had no engine. The laughter that afternoon was loud enough to echo across the grain silos. Old Harold Benson, who owned the hardware store, leaned on his cane and chuckled so hard he nearly lost his breath. A group of younger farmers stood nearby whispering to each other, shaking their heads as if Ethan had finally lost his mind. An engine-less tractor was useless. Everyone knew that. But Ethan didn't react to the laughter. He simply unhooked the chains from the pickup and slowly rolled the machine toward the old shed behind what used to be his father's farm. The building had somehow survived the years of neglect. Its wooden boards were gray and splintered, but the roof still stood strong against the wind. Ethan pushed the tractor inside and closed the doors behind him. From that day forward, the shed lights stayed on every night. Weeks passed. Then months. Villagers often noticed a faint humming sound drifting through the valley. After midnight, a strange mechanical rhythm that nobody could quite identify. Some thought Ethan was trying to rebuild the tractor using spare parts. Others believed he was simply wasting his time chasing a dream that died long ago. But the truth was something far more remarkable. During the 5 years Ethan had been gone, he hadn't run away from farming. He had gone to learn. He had worked long nights in factories and repair shops, saving every dollar he could. During the day, he attended community college classes, studying engineering, renewable energy, and agricultural technology. It wasn't easy. Many nights he slept only 3 or 4 hours, his hands stained with grease and metal dust. But every lesson he learned carried one purpose in his mind. He was going to bring life back to Harlington Valley. The tractor he bought at the scrapyard was not meant to run on diesel like the old machines. Inside that rusted frame, Ethan had begun building something completely different. Piece by piece, he installed electric motors salvaged from industrial equipment. He connected them to a battery system he had carefully designed himself. But the most unusual part sat on the roof of the tractor, a foldable frame of solar panels that could expand like wings when parked in the field. It took him nearly 9 months to finish. 9 months of welding, testing, failing, rebuilding, and trying again. 9 months of villagers laughing every time they drove past the shed. Then one quiet spring morning, the doors finally opened. Ethan Caldwell drove the tractor out into the sunlight. At first glance, it still looked old and rusted. But as he unfolded the solar panels and pressed the ignition switch, something extraordinary happened. Instead of the roar of a diesel engine, the machine came alive with a smooth, steady electric hum. The wheels turned, the tractor moved, and for the first time in nearly a decade, the abandoned Caldwell field felt movement again. People began gathering along the dirt road, watching in stunned silence as Ethan drove across the dry soil. The tractor pulled a plow behind it effortlessly, carving neat lines into the earth. No smoke, no fuel, just sunlight powering the machine. Harold Benson lowered his cane slowly, his laughter completely gone. The same men who once mocked Ethan now stared with wide eyes as he worked the land from sunrise to sunset without stopping once for fuel. Word spread quickly. Within weeks, farmers from neighboring towns came to see the strange solar tractor that ran without diesel. Ethan explained how the panels charged the batteries during the day, how the motors used far less energy than traditional engines, and how the system could run for years with minimal cost. For farmers who had nearly gone bankrupt buying fuel every season, the idea sounded almost impossible. But Ethan didn't just explain it. He started building more. Using scrap materials and affordable parts, he helped local farmers convert their old tractors into electric machines. At first, only a few trusted him enough to try. But when they saw how much money they saved and how quietly the machines worked, the change spread like rain across dry land. Fields that had been abandoned slowly came back to life. Crops began growing again. The valley that once looked like a graveyard for farming slowly turned green. But Ethan never asked for credit. He simply kept working. One evening, years after that first tractor rolled into the village, Ethan stood near the oak tree where his father was buried. The sunset painted the sky with the same tired orange glow that had filled the valley the day people laughed at him. Only now the fields were alive again. Tractors moved quietly in the distance, their solar panels reflecting the fading light like small mirrors scattered across the land. Ethan placed his hand on the rough bark of the oak tree and looked across the valley. He didn't say anything, but for the first time in many years, the land finally seemed to speak again. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder to never give up, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that inspire hope. And before we reach the final moment of this story, we have a small request for you. Please comment the words, "Hope still grows," below if you believe that even the smallest idea can change the world. Because sometimes the people who get laughed at the most are the ones who end up changing everything. Years later, visitors driving through Harlington Valley often stop at the roadside to admire the endless green fields powered by silent electric tractors moving under the sun. Most of them never know the full story. They only hear a small part of it, the story about a man who once bought a tractor with no engine. What they don't realize is that inside that empty machine, Ethan Caldwell placed something far more powerful than an engine. He placed belief. And belief, when it refuses to die, can turn even the quietest dream into a revolution.